So Bernie Sanders, I believe it was yesterday, basically came out with a comment saying that his supporters, people that were loyal to him, if they don't come out and support Joe Biden, they're, quote, being irresponsible if they just sit back and do nothing to help Joe Biden get elected. And he was getting quite a bit of pushback online, at least from the circles and from the people that I follow, rightly so from my perspective, because Bernie, let's be frank, what was totally irresponsible was you dropping out in the middle of this pandemic where Joe Biden, where's he been at? He's been hiding during this whole campaign basically, and hasn't come out with any type of adequate response for this pandemic, whether it's policies or just getting out there and letting your presence be known as a supposed Democratic frontrunner. So first, you dropped out. You shouldn't have done that. You should have stayed in as long as you could. There was no reason to drop out in April, for fuck's sake, when Joe Biden has decades-long horrible policy records attached to his name. There's a very credible sexual assault allegation against him, the very serious and sad cognitive decline. All of these things are huge red flags with Joe Biden being the Democratic nominee. Leaving that aside, okay, you drop out, you endorse Biden less than a week later without getting any type of fucking policy concessions whatsoever, Bernie. That's what's fucking irresponsible, is you completely selling out the movement and the people, the working class people who, you know, gave you their time by knocking on doors, making phone calls, texting, posting on different social media platforms, donating. You know, I mean, the biggest, sectors as far as people who supported him were people, you know, that worked, the working class, people that worked at Amazon, people that worked at Walmart, teachers, barista, just, you know, everyday working class folks. Those were the backbone of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And again, they were supporting Bernie. I was supporting Bernie because of the policies that he championed and supports. And we're not some cult of personality. Bernie Sanders, again, was, from my perspective, the compromise candidate, and I was supporting him because of things like Medicare for all, because I actually do believe healthcare is a human right. Joe Biden likes to throw that around. Okay, then if that's how you feel, then you'd be supporting Medicare for all, you fucking dumbass. Obviously he doesn't, and he's propped up by the for-profit health insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry, and his campaign is stacked with those same types of people. So what's irresponsible is Bernie completely selling out the working class. Again, let's not forget, he gave this really passionate and fiery speech denouncing that third stimulus plan that was $4.5 trillion no strings attached giveaway to the biggest and wealthiest corporations in the United States, while the working people get crumbs at best. So I think that was irresponsible, Bernie. And then again, you dropping out, endorsing Biden a week later without holding his feet to the fire whatsoever. You couldn't even on that fucking live stream calling out and say, because Biden at one point, do you have any questions for me, Bernie? Bernie should have put him on the spot right fucking then. It's like, I can't actually endorse you if you don't support Medicare for all, emergency UBI for the duration of this pandemic, canceling student loan debt, making college tuition free, and a Green New Deal. If you can't support 5 of those policies that are really important to me and the people that support me, the Not Me Us movement, then I'm sorry, Joe. I know you're my good friend and all, and I say it every fucking time, but I just can't support you. He wasn't even willing to do that. He was more willing to prop up the Democratic establishment and not wanting to, you know, get kicked off of any committees or upset the Democratic leadership, whether it's, you know, people like Pelosi or Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He would rather stay in their good graces than actually fight for the working people. So again, we don't have 68,000+ people dying because they don't have health care. So we don't have 500,000+ people going bankrupt. So we can actually create an economic system where we don't have 40+% of the population not being able to afford a $400 emergency. And obviously that number would be much higher now, given that we are in the middle of a fucking pandemic. 17 million people have lost their jobs in the last 3 weeks. And Bernie Sanders wasn't willing to do anything. And frankly, I've had no illusions. I always knew, because he's always told us that, he was going to support the Democratic nominee if it wasn't him, no matter who it was. Okay, I get that. You gotta fall in line if that's what you think you have to do in order to, run in the Democratic Party or whatever. But what you don't have to fucking do is drop out and then a week later fully and wholeheartedly throw your support behind Joe Biden when he doesn't support any of the core policies that you support. And again, Bernie, the reason people were supporting you was based on policy. You tell people to vote for Joe Biden and to support him, and if they don't, then they're irresponsible. No, it's fucking irresponsible of you to think that people are just going to blindly follow your advice to support Joe Biden when Joe Biden has made no concessions. He hasn't moved to the left on anything. His fucking feeble-minded attempt to do that was to lower the Medicare eligibility age to lower it to 60 from 65, when Hillary Clinton in 2016 was to the left of that. She was offering to lower it to 50. Sorry, I got cut off there. My partner just called me, and I had some good news actually. I'm getting some funding from my school to help offset some of the cost of not being able to work during this pandemic, as my work is closed and I got a few other things going on, but I digress. So it's completely irresponsible of Bernie just telling people to fall in line behind Joe Biden when Joe Biden hasn't made any type of concessions to the left. And again, I will make the point one more time. The reason people supported Bernie Sanders was not because of some cult of personality and they were just Bernie bros who thought Bernie was awesome or whatever. It's because he supported things that they believed in, like Medicare for all, like a Green New Deal, like making college tuition free, like canceling student loan debt, like canceling medical debt, like a living wage, like ending the wars, like taxing Wall Street, all of these things. That's why we supported Bernie. If he just tells all of his supporters to jump in line behind Joe Biden without actually giving us a reason to, a believable and strong case to do that, we're not going to do that. And he was even throwing his former press secretary, Brianna Joy Gray, under the bus, saying, she's not on my payroll anymore, or she's not on my payroll now, she's just my former press secretary. It's like, fuck you, Bernie. I mean, you should have listened to your fucking campaign advisors who were actually trying to get you to campaign to win in a lot of ways by wanting you to go after Biden and really attack him aggressively on the issues, especially on the issues of electability. It's like, Bernie, you can just fuck off, from my perspective, telling people who don't support or don't vote for Joe Biden without him making any type of serious concessions or outreach, to the left, to Bernie Sanders supporters. You can just go fuck off, man. Jesus Christ, my perception of you as this strong supporter of the working class people in this country has diminished substantially with your recent line of attacks. And then I don't know, it's just hugely disappointing. And that ain't gonna work. The whole voter shaming and all that bullshit ain't gonna work, bud. People tried that in 2016. Look how it worked out for Hillary Clinton. You actually got to make a compelling case for the candidate. And I know that's hard with Joe Biden because he is so fucking horrible. But Biden, again, hasn't made any type of effort. Lowering the Medicare eligibility age by 5 years is it's a kick in the fucking nuts. And the same thing with the means tested student debt relief program. So it's like, you really want to make inroads and get some of your supporters to support Joe Biden, then you should have held his feet to the fucking fire and got him to capitulate on at least a couple of your core issues, for fuck's sake. It's not irresponsible if people don't vote for Joe Biden if they don't think there's a compelling reason for it, okay? And again, Bernie, hugely disappointed and in those remarks, and a lot of people are, and a lot of people that were big supporters of you, like myself, like Kyle Kalinske, and you know, others on social media, for correctly pointing out how ridiculous and just such a shitty take that is, saying people who aren't voting for Joe Biden are irresponsible. Be a little different, Bernie, if you had maybe like got Biden to commit to Medicare for all, like we're in a fucking pandemic and you say that's really important. Okay, then get Biden to support that, you dumbass. A Green New Deal so we have an inhabitable planet to live on. Canceling student loan debt so people aren't shackled with tens and thousands of dollars of student loan debt, and the economy that's going to be worse than the Great Depression at a certain point. An emergency UBI because of at least 10% of the workforce has lost their jobs in the last 4 weeks, but nothing. You got nothing. You got nothing. And you just expect people to fall in line behind Joe Biden, who is a fucking corporatist and a militarist and a neoliberal centrist to his core. Ain't gonna fucking work, Bernie. We're not a cult. Our supporting you again for those policies you ran on. Biden doesn't support any of them. Good fucking luck convincing people to support Biden without him adopting any of those things. Good fucking luck, Bernie. Sorry for all the cussing, it just got me really fired up, as you can see. But I would love to hear your thoughts on Bernie's comments calling people irresponsible who don't support or vote for Joe Biden. Please leave those in the comment sections down below. And if you like this video, subscribe and like it. Peace. Much love.